Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 243 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz. Thank you very much for joining us tonight as we're going to relatively quickly go through two extremely important Kentucky Derby preps that happened over the weekend, the Florida Derby and the Arkansas Derby, with my fantastic co-host, plus Kyle Roscoe from Bettin and Boozin also will be joining us. Please make sure you subscribe on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are only 68. That's right, 68 subscribers away from 2K. I know we have a lot of people that watch this show and are not subscribing based on the numbers I have on YouTube. So please make sure you hit that subscribe button. It would really help us out. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers. We've grown tremendously in a very short amount of time. We're very happy about that. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at HKravitz there on the name tag, and then at the bottom of the screen scrolling hkravitzhorse@gmail.com as my email. Of course, you can listen on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor as well. And then also we have a website, we have Power Picks, but we're going to jump right in because to help promote our Power Picks and the website, I need to bring in my co-host to talk about all of that. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in. First of all, this evening from the East Coast of Maryland, Mr. Pete Visco. From the Saratoga Special and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Mr. Paul Halloran, and the host of Bettin Boozin and a former co-host of the show, Mr. Kyle Roscoe. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
What's up, gentlemen?
Doing
How's
great.
it going?
Got a big
Excellent.
night. Doing great. Good, big night, guys, going on. I got a few very quick things I want to tackle before we get into the recaps of the Florida Derby and I almost said Kentucky Derby and the Arkansas Derby. Not yet. Again, if you're watching, please make sure you comment in the chat. We'd like to have a very lively, active discussion tonight. Guys, first of all, let me bring up a few things very quickly, like I said. First of all, this week, we have a loaded show this week, guys. Loaded podcast this week. This is, of course, our YouTube channel. I'm just going to scroll right down. You see on the upcoming live streams, let me go full screen here. Of course, we have our show going on right now as we speak. You see right here, we've got Bettin and Boozin on Wednesday, normal time. It says 8 p.m. These are Central Standard Time on the YouTube channel. 9 p.m. Eastern. Kyle can talk about that a little bit. Then we're going to have two shows this Thursday. We're going to have a 6:30 Eastern show for the Bluegrass Stakes Late Pick 5. We're going to have another show at 8 p.m. Eastern for the Wood Memorial Stakes Late Pick 5. And then we're going to be live this Saturday, guys, for the Tapatrice Watch Party. I put about 5 o'clock Eastern time. That will be a TBA once the entries come out. We'll have a little better time. We're going to show the last 2 or 3 races at Keeneland leading into the Bluegrass Stakes. So, guys, I bring us all back on full screen here. Big show. Kyle, what you got going on for Bettin and Boozin Wednesday?
I mean, we got a massive show. You know, this is the time of year where you got to hit it hard, and I know these guys obviously are hitting it hard with their shows. Bettin and Boozin, normal time, normal type of show, but we're going to go over the opening day Late Pick 5 at Keeneland, which is this Friday. The last 5 races there, obviously giving out our Pick 5s after, but also this weekend, not only is there all these Derby preps, it's the Masters, baby. It's the golf pinnacle of the entire year, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions. So we're going to go over mine and Patrick and Charlie's futures bets for that as well. And I have a pretty hot take there as I follow a bunch of golfers there. So I have a pretty good pick to win the Masters this year.
I just looked at the weather, Kyle. Not looking. I know Paul's like, all right, but Paul, this is for golf, not for horse racing. So I'm going to think it's more accurate. Kyle, looks like a lot of rain this weekend. I saw a high of 55 on Saturday in Augusta, Georgia.
Beautiful Georgia
this
weather.
Is not going to be a pretty weather Masters. At least it looks like right now.
No, and that's what's fueling my picks. Actually, I've gone through, past. Obviously, everyone plays better in the dry, but there are some guys that can adapt really well. Mostly the well-known guys, but there are some guys laying under the radar. I think that could be a pretty big force in this year's Masters. But there is, like I said, it doesn't look good. And when it's 55 high in Augusta, Georgia, you know it's not a good weekend for golf.
All right. Well, we'll be talking about it more on Wednesday. Now, Pete, we've been talking about the power picks, constantly, and Paul, it's really been doing well. We talked about, coincidentally, last week we talked about how there's ups and downs in these picks. Last week, we absolutely crushed it with the power picks, and I do want to show very briefly where they can find that. You can go ahead and talk over what people are going to see, Pete, as I bring up where the power pick results are and how people can find out about our power pick. So, Pete, go ahead and you can just watch the screen there. You can talk through what we're going to see.
Yeah, if you go to the website, like Howard mentioned, hhhracingpodcast.com, and right in front, you click on Power Picks, not overly complicated. Right there is just a quick description of what the Power Picks and the stats of the day are. And yep, if you click on that button, you can subscribe. It basically just takes you to Patreon. So Howard thankfully clicked on it. So you see there, and that's where you can actually subscribe. But if you're on the website and you don't remember Patreon, just go to there. And then a new thing we started a few weeks ago was we're going to at least track 2 weeks worth of scores. So you'll see last week, you'll see this week. Now you see last week was a little rough. There were no scores. This week, we more than made up for it. Well, I should say Howard pretty much made up for it. Pick 5 hits at Gulfstream, pick 5 hit at Oaklawn, couple winners, Mage underneath in a big exacta. So much better week. So as like Howard said, ups and downs, but we're going to track it here. We're not going to go too far back just because it's, spatial purposes. And then what you didn't show there is if you scroll down a bit, on that screen as well, there's examples of there's a viewable right on the screen example of the power picks if you've never seen them before, and then you can download the last 15. It's actually the last 14 in our Breeders' Cup, just because that one was a special blowout edition. So if you're curious about the power picks, we talk about them all the time. Go there, you can look at them in depth, see what they're all about. You should subscribe. I mean, again, we hope to get hot for Triple Crown season and beyond.
Absolutely. Ed Morales is here. Thanks. We had the pick 5 and pick 4 both tracks. Appreciate it. Jim Pillar's power picks were on fire this weekend. Great work, guys. Jim, we appreciate all that. All right. Let's, Paul, if we had more time, I would discuss the kerfuffle that you got on Twitter with Abadi Bernstein. I shouldn't say kerfuffle, but a lot going on with the
respectful.
Women.
It was respectful.
The only thing I want to say about women's basketball real quick, which you don't usually talk about, the ladies, Paul, and honestly as a referee and I coach for 20 years, we both have a special connection to basketball in different ways. The women's game was fantastic all weekend long. And yes, they don't dunk over people. They can't, fly over people in the air, but their shooting and passing skills were absolutely amazing. And despite the little controversy with all the sportsmanship nonsense, I thought they really showed out this weekend.
Yeah, the Iowa-South Carolina game Friday night was ESPN's highest-rated men's or women's broadcast in, 10 years. I forget the number, but huge numbers. And you're right. And I do follow it. I mean, from my sports writer days and covering it, and my wife coached high school basketball for a long time, very successful coach here in Massachusetts, and through refereeing and assigning refereeing, and the level of play is just through the roof. And that was a great stage yesterday. Unfortunately, it was ruined, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah,
and I don't really, the sportsmanship thing is a whole other story, but I could talk about the officiating, and no one is more with the officials than me. But if you're going to be in a game like that, you better have a feel for the game, and you do not put the fourth foul on the best player on the court on an absolute nonsensical, ticky-tack, idiotic lack of feel for the game foul. So we'll move on.
Well, coming from you,
it is indebatable. Howard, I will tell you this. I just assigned the Massachusetts high school state championships last weekend. If I had an official make that technical call in a state championship game, I would never use that official again.
Wow. Strong words from Paul Halloran.
So I like it, Paul.
So let's move on.
Let's move on. Let's move on, guys. We're going to cover 2 races we're going to talk about in detail. We're going to be out at 45. It's a 45-minute show tonight, guys. So literally about 15 minutes on each race. That's all we need.
Well, hey, Pete, that's mighty nice of him, Pete. He's got us working like 12 hours a day all week. And he says, but you know what? I'm going to give you a break on Monday. I'll let you out before the championship game.
Yep, that's
no
right.
labor laws. Hey, Pete, no labor laws in Illinois.
No. Luckily, we're not. Luckily, we're not under 18, Paul. Or he'd be in jail pretty much.
Paul, you brought up for the record. I said anyone who wanted to come on, I would be happy to do the solo if necessary.
No. Hey, it's Derby time, baby. We're ready.
I didn't twist you guys up.
We got Derby fever.
By the way, Paul, you want to complain about the women's over the men's. The men's game starting at 9:20 Eastern doesn't exactly ingratiate itself to the rest of the world.
All the kids on the East Coast, it's whatever. Let's get to the races, guys. But Pete, I'm so glad you brought that up. I think that's.
How about all the old people on the East Coast?
I know.
Screw the kids.
Isn't your bedtime in like 5 minutes anyway, Paul? So
one shining moment's not going to happen till like 1 a.m. depending on how long the game goes.
It does allow us to do the show at the proper time, though. So let's jump in, guys. Let's get to it.
Let's do it.
Florida Derby. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to show the whole replay, guys, with sound. So it works best. I know we don't usually do this, but it does work best when you guys are muted when the video goes on. Otherwise, we can get some echo. So when I start the video, please go ahead and mute. We're going to show the whole race with sound, and then we'll come back and talk about many things. I'm sure you guys have plenty of opinions. I'm bringing a little math into the equation tonight because I have a strong opinion in this race that I didn't have until I dug a little bit deeper. So let's go ahead. Here's, of course, let me make this a little bit bigger for everyone. Okay, so here is the chart. We're just going to go right to the race right now. We're going to watch this full screen. I'm going to turn. Actually, I just did it again, guys. I have to make sure before I do that. Oh boy, I have to make sure that when I share the screen, that Pete knows what's going on here. That I share it with the sound. All right, now we got the sound on. So if you guys want to go ahead and mute, we're going to go ahead and show the race here in its entirety right now with the sound. Let me take off also the banner here. Got a lot to click. Okay. And we're going to go full screen here. Here is the Florida Derby 2023 won by Forte.
Forte tosses his head around, settles in. And they're off in the Curlin Florida Derby. It was an excellent beginning for Forte. He'll be able to duck over some from his outside draw. Meanwhile, West Coast Cowboy firing through at the inside to take the early lead. Fort Bragg got over quickly, and he's on to take over now. Fort Bragg from the 10 post to the rail and on top a length and a half. Mr. Peaks is now second with West Coast Cowboy in third. Young Frau between horses. Mr. Ripple is next. Cyclone Mischief is stacked 4 wide, 5 wide, WNL. And that's a length and a half to Il Maricolo. Irad Ortiz Jr. and Forte. They're toward the back of the field while 3 wide. Shaq Diesel is next, then Nautical Star. And Mage is last of all as they complete the opening quarter in 23-2. Down the backstretch they go. Jockey Joel Rosario and Fort Bragg on top by 2.5. Mr. Peaks is second. Mr. Ripple is third. West Coast Cowboy is down toward the inside. Working out in the center is Cyclone Mischief. Then it's Young Frau, Forte, starting to get a bit closer now. He's about 6 lengths off the speed through a 46 3/2 mile. Strong fractions being put up by Fort Bragg. He heads into the far turn on top by 2. Mr. Peaks is second. Mr. Ripple is third. Up on the outside, it's Forte. He's starting to get to work now. He's about 8 lengths off this loose leader with 5/16 remaining. Fort Bragg tries to sneak away. He has the lead by 2.5. Mr. Ripple, he's now second. Cyclone Mischief moves up on the outside third. Forte's locked in as Mage begins to roll from the back. They race past the quarter-mile pole in the Florida Derby, and Mage got the jump on Forte as he goes to get Fort Bragg. Cyclone Mischief is fighting hard. He's still right there. Less than a quarter mile to come, and Cyclone Mischief, he's up for a fight and tries to turn away Mage. Forte better hurry up. Final 16th of a mile. Forte starts to gather in the top horses. Here comes Forte. This is going to be very close, but the champion prevails. Forte wins over Mage. Mage was second. Third, Cyclone Mischief. Then Mr. Ripple, Fort Bragg for the high 5. He gave you a scare, but he got it done. On to Louisville for Forte.
All right, so we're back now. You guys can go ahead and obviously put it back on. So I purposely wanted to show the gallop out there because, again, everyone knows I'm I'm a gallop out guy, and it was clear that Mage, and he wasn't asking. It was clear that Mage galloped out with Forte, if not slightly ahead. Maybe that means nothing to people, but it's food for it's food for thought. So Pete already's chiming in. So guys, let me present this a few different ways. First of all, here's the standard chart. You see Forte 1. We can see the prices there at the top. It was very chalky. It was 1-5 over 9-2. It was Cyclone Mischief third. There's the results. I'll show the buyer figures for everyone. Let me go a little bit bigger, guys. Let me go one more tick bigger. There we go. You see right here, these are the buyer figures of the race. Now, the first thing I want to say, Craig Milkowski at Time Form, they talked about this. The original time on the screen, gentlemen, was 1:48 and change. I know Craig Milkowski, and I think David Aragon and a few people went back. It was actually inaccurate. We're not going to get into a 45-minute conversation as to why it was inaccurate. We know there's issues in horse racing. The final time ended up being 1:49. Where is it? Should be on here. There it is.
35 or 37.
149.37. I don't know if people can see that on the screen there. 149.37. The time form US was, I think, 126. Excuse me, 116, somewhere around there. And then the buyer was 95. So that maybe the time form had the race a little bit better, guys, but pretty darn close there. So I got a bunch of questions that I want to talk about in this race. Here's the first question. I'm just going to leave it open to anyone. The main question I want to ask everyone out there, and please comment in the chat. I could wait till the end of the Florida Derby conversation, but I'm just going to get it out right there. Who ran the better race? That's the main focus. Mage, Forte, or do you want to ride the fence and take the same? Pete, I'm going to go with you first. In your opinion, who ran the better? Not who's going to win the Derby, not who's better going 1.25 miles. Who ran the better race and why in the Florida Derby, Mage or Forte?
Oh, I thought it was Forte. I was completely puzzled by all the people saying Mage ran the better race. I thought Mage got the better ride. I thought Saez actually outrode Irad in that race. The break wasn't great, but Mage had a pretty comfortable ride, even though it was well in the back. He was pretty comfortable. He made a better move. He had a straight shot. He didn't have to weave through traffic. He did everything. He got the jump on Forte by like 3 lengths hitting the lane. If you're going to beat him, that's how you do it. And he tried. He put his best shot out there, and Forte ran him down, and I thought he ran him down easy when it got to it. Forte wasn't super impressive, but I thought he beat him pretty comfortably without even really getting into him that much down the lane. So I thought Forte in a walk was better.
Okay, now and I'm going to interject, I'm going to get all your guys' opinions. What is extremely clear that I don't think anyone could argue, Mage is right here, did not break well. Now that's self-inflicted, Paul. So it's not like he got bumped. I didn't see the head-on, to be honest, but didn't look like he got bumped. It didn't look like anything other than just broke slow. And by the way, Tapit Trice doesn't break that way. He just takes a while to get into stride. Tapit Trice breaks with the field, at least in my opinion, but he's just really slow in the stride. This, Paul, would you agree, Paul, this is a legit slow break by Mage? Meanwhile, Forte broke absolutely fine.
Yeah, and this is why this is a great game, because I love Pete and I respect his opinion, and I could not disagree with him anymore on this point. In what world is Mage supposed to be dead last at the turn in this race? He's run twice, went to the lead once, 3rd out of 9 the other time. Okay. In what universe is he supposed to be dead last and have to come from behind Forte? Now, Forte, he beat him on the square. Mage did get ahead of him in the stretch, but if you told me Mage was going to be behind Forte at the first turn, I would have, in a million years, wouldn't have picked Mage on top as I did on the show. And 3rd career start for Mage, 7th career start for Forte. I think Mage by far ran the better race.
Oh, okay, I totally disagree.
Pete and Kyle, hold on. I'll let you guys, Kyle, I'll let you chime in. And Pete, you'll have full opportunity to retort. I just want to bring up some things that I think are factual, that I don't think are debatable, at least in my opinion. Can we all agree that at the turn here, the first turn. Forte's here, Mage is here. They're both about in the 3 path. I think, right? We can agree they're both losing about the same amount of ground. Now, Forte has company, but Mage is equally outside, of him. So I think on the first turn, at least, they lost about the same amount of ground, in my opinion. I think, Kyle, would that be fair to say before we go on to the backstretch?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And as you'll see, they actually go to the drone cam around the turn. You'll see Mage is running right behind Forte. So I think it's very fair to say.
Okay, and I'm going to freeze it. It's going to be in just a second here. Pete, I'm going to give you a chance to retort because you guys are completely different. But I do want to take it to the drone shot. Okay, so here's the drone shot. Here's Forte is right here. Here's Mage. And as we keep it running, Pete, you're going to see Mage go a little bit further outside and definitely be wider on the far turn. There's no debating that. Mage was about in the 4 or 5 path. Forte was not, but had to wait. So I'm gonna let it play a little bit. Pete.
Actually, isn't
I think Forte's right in front of him. I think that's.
I'm sorry, Forte's right here.
Yeah.
I apologize. Forte's right here. Mage is here. Pete, I'll let it run through a little bit, and you can retort to Paul's comment if you'd like at any time.
No, I mean, I think Paul's comment makes sense. I think there's a difference between this isn't the race that you would have expected to have Mage run. I just thought the way once it happened, I thought from that point forward, I thought Mage had the easier trip and got the better ride, the cleaner ride, I shouldn't say. Whereas Forte is he keeps running into horses who are dying in his face a little bit. He has to weave in and out. He gets hung up by that 5 who dies in his face. Whereas Mage just gets the clean run, gets the jump. I mean, if you're a great horse and Mage might be eventually, you get the jump like that, you have a pretty good shot to win this race. I mean, I think most people watching figured this is over when Mage gets the lead because, I mean, he's quality and he beat him to the spot, which is what you want in horse racing if you're trying to get ahead of a horse who's either on your level or in this case maybe
right
better.
There, Pete. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's what we call in horse racing a blind switch, right? Forte probably wanted to go to the outside, although there is a space here because you're going to see Forte come to the 2 path. Mage makes this wide. I love the aggressiveness, by the way. Let me put us on screen. I just want to say I love the aggressiveness by Saez. Now,
me too. I love the ride.
Full disclosure, I had to pick 5 to both. So Mage would have paid $9.50, by the way. So I was cheering for Mage in this race for obvious reasons. But if you just take that out of the equation, I love the ride by Saez. I don't think he moved too soon. I think he had no choice. I think he had to get the jump on Forte. I don't know how you felt about that, Kyle, but I love this ride. And Kyle, there's no doubt that he gets the jump, but there's also no doubt he's at least 3, 4. I mean, right here, it's hard to tell, but this looks like the 5 path, and this is maybe the 2.5 path for Forte, who then follows Mage to the outside, Kyle.
Yeah, Forte is going to even swing even wider, probably to the 5, 6 path. But I mean, you're still riding behind 4 horses in the easier path, tips out at the top of the stretch. But I mean, to Pete's point, I mean, you look at this. I mean, obviously, Cyclone Mischief runs with him. But once he goes past Cycle Mischief, you almost think the race is over, right? Because once Mage starts powering past him, you think there's no way Forte at this point is going to catch up to a horse like that who's motoring home. But then you see Irad start to hit the whip, and now he starts coming. And look, champions find a way to win. I don't want to take anything away from either horse. I said this before the show to you, Howard, that I think, like I said, always draw comparisons. I think both horses ran a really good race, and I think especially Mage, who's only raced 3 times, which I think Paul brought up. I think that horse is only going to improve, and maybe the Kentucky Derby. You don't want to talk about going forward, but in a race like that, maybe a 1.25 mile might not suit him. Obviously, he can continue to get better, but Forte with that late surge at the end, I think they both ran a great race. Forte, just like I said, champions find a way to win, but Mage got the jump. Saez put him in a perfect spot. But I personally think Forte ran just a slightly better race.
Guys, we got a lot of.
There was a comment. Yeah, there was a comment about him lathering up.
I love it. This is why we want to do. We got a lot of comments, and guys, we're not going to be able to get to every comment. But Thomas Espinoza thought Forte ran better. TV broadcast noted Forte was anti-fractious. He was a little bit fractious in the gate, but he settled down before that. I do also want to mention, we're not going to go back and watch it, guys, because we could talk for an hour. The 3 horse was really fractious. The one to the left of Mage, and Paul is shaking his head, was really fractious. Paul, I don't know if that had anything to do with Mage not breaking, but it might have, because the 3 was really fractious before the gate. We have Roshan thought Mage ran the better race, but I'm with Pete. I thought Forte won easy. That seems a little bit contradictory, but okay. Let's see here. A lot of other comments. Jim Plars likes the blind switch reference. Thanks, Jim, for that. Paul, did Mage tire, or was Forte just that had more stamina and just regathered?
Yeah, I think the latter. I think you got to give Forte credit for going by him. And Kyle brought this up, and I wouldn't discount it. The fact that Mage, for about a 16th of a mile, really had to work to put away Cyclone Mischief, that is a factor. Because if you just take Cyclone Mischief out of that equation, he is in open air, as they say, opening up, and might get even braver. Now, look, he got beat again on the square, but and I'm happy for Dale Romans, actually, because Cyclone Mischief did not look like a horse who wanted any part of any distance. And he's now got Dale Romans in the Kentucky Derby. But Cyclone Mischief put up a pretty good fight there for about a half a furlong.
And Cyclone Mischief was like 4 or 5 wide into the first. He's the one horse that I take out as that ran better than I thought. I don't like him in the Derby at all, just for the record. I don't think he's a mile and quarter horse. But
Correct.
He ran better than I thought. And you're exactly right, Paul. Because it looked like Mage he didn't really switch leads. But once he cleared Cyclone Mischief, I think he thought, the horse in his own mind thought, I've got this one a little bit. I'm not saying he slowed down, but he got a little goofy with his lead change and just, Forte just ran over top. And Pete, they said on the show, I can't remember who it was. I remember one announcer. I'm going to push back greatly on this. Forte was like stuck behind horses and had to like weave in and out. He saved a lot of more ground on the turn than Mage, in my opinion. And it was a great ride by Irad to follow Forte. But to say that like Forte had to like wait or steady, I'm going to just strongly disagree. That's my opinion, at least.
No, I don't think steady. I think steady's too strong of a word. I just think the one thing that I like that Saez did was Saez gave Mage. Saez didn't screw around with any other horse. Like, I'm not a big on the wide on the turn. Good horses can go wide on the turn. I think Mage, because Forte had to go wider, as Kyle said, and he had to work in.
But he didn't have to go wider until the very end of the turn. I don't have the track. We don't have track.
I get that.
I don't know the ground.
Get that.
I
but
guarantee you Mage had bigger ground loss. You would agree with that, right? In the whole race.
Sure, but again, that I don't. That's
but it matters, though.
It doesn't. I don't think sometimes. I think sometimes it does. But I think what Forte had to do is Forte was inside on like the 2.5 path, like you said, and then he swings, so you lose that momentum. Meanwhile, Mage, Saez took him straight shot. He never had to slow that horse down once, that whole race pretty much. He was always running, whereas Forte dipped and he went inside, and then the 7 died in his face a bit, the 5 died in his face a bit. I'm not saying like steady type, but I'm saying he never got full momentum going straight. And then he still swung and still then had to pass a really quality horse. So that's the only reason. I'm not even trying to say it's like some big disparity. I mean,
yeah,
I just don't think, I think Forte just ran the better race. I think he's better today. I don't know if he's going to be better in the future or any of that stuff. I just think he was better on that day, but I don't really care who was better. Sometimes that's a horse racing argument. No, I mean, sometimes that argument comes up. It feels like, and I'm not saying Paul would never do this, but sometimes I think people try and be too smart for their own good and always say the loser was the better horse. Like, how often do we see that where it's like that loser ran the better race? And sometimes it's true. Sometimes I think it's people just trying to, start a conversation or seem smarter than they are some days. But
fair enough.
I don't know.
I want to show, if everyone could see what I have highlighted, I'm not going to make it any bigger, but if you see what I have highlighted, guys, this is Mage's middle 6 furlongs, right? It's from the half-mile pole to just beyond that. So this is if you add these up, this is his second, third, and fourth quarter, guys, that he ran. And if you add that up, it's 111.77. Again, 111.77. To me, Paul, and we talk about turn time. Now, those fractions are not all turn time, but that second quarter of 22.82, Paul, was legitimately faster than anyone in the race. That was him in the backstretch trying to move up and start his move. And then he went 23.78, which if you just look down at the times here, he ran the fast. That's what 46.6. He ran 46.3, Paul, into that, to make that big move. That takes a lot of energy out of him. So if people think that he can't get the distance in the Derby, I don't know if he can or he can't. But Paul, he made a big, wide, sustained move, and that took a lot of energy out of Mage.
Well, that's why I mentioned the break, and that's all predicated by breaking so poorly. Yes, Saez, although he ran that fast second quarter, but man, he managed still be last going down the backstretch. So it's a good thing he went that fast, or he would have been really last. But
and then you look at the final quarters, Paul. If you want to talk about the final quarter too, Paul, sorry. Forte was unbelievable. 12.56 versus Mage, who obviously was getting tired, but fastest final quarter was Forte at final eighth of a mile was 12.56, and he was pretty close to the lead at that point. So that is very impressive final eighth by Forte, Paul.
Oh no, once he got rolling, he was rolling. And how, Mage in a way, reminds me of another horse we're going to be watching this Saturday. He's just learning. He's learning how to run every race. That's career. That I will say this, regardless of that race, that is a huge race for a Grade 1 in career start number 3. Huge. And he will win. This horse, I believe, will win one of the races this year, whether it's one of the Derbies or the Preakness or the Travers or the Haskell. Or, maybe it's the Ohio Derby if things go bad, or maybe the Pennsylvania Derby when I'll be visiting our friend Jessica. Okay,
so he'll win a Derby.
I really think so. I think he showed a lot. Is Forte the better horse, as Pete says today? Yeah, and likely is the better horse 4 weeks from Saturday. But I think this horse has huge upside based on that start.
Kyle, I'll let you finish, but let me just say, Kyle, before you give your 1 minute close, then we're going to go to the Arkansas Derby. I think Mage ran the better race. I'm not 100% sure, guys, the mile quarter is going to work for him. He's the kind of horse, Kyle, Pete, and Paul, that I can easily see being in the lead, like mid-stretch at Churchill Downs in a month. Like, easily, I can hear Pete, I was saying, Mage takes the lead. Like, I just don't know if
Travis Stone, you'd hit Travis Stone say that, not Pete Aiello.
Did I say Pete Aiello?
Yeah.
Wow, so sorry to Travis.
Why I'm here, Pete. Pete, that's why I'm here.
2 months ago.
I mean, you got to correct the teacher sometimes, Paul. You got to correct the teacher sometimes.
With glee. With glee. I can
hear Travis Stone saying Mage takes the lead. Kyle, I'm just not sure. This might be too much too soon, especially after that kind of effort. Kyle, Mage is the horse that I'm really going to watch on how he's working, and pre the week of the Derby. If he's working great, I might actually use him as one of my possible win candidates. I don't know if this can be too much too soon. Kyle, you have the final say, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we looked at it it's not so much so soon as that table last year, but it's the same type of argument, but I think that last race with the Florida Derby for Mage, like you guys pointed out, was a great learning experience. And don't let this taken down.
That's Drew Cody wants to know if Kyle's drinking a 40 of Old English. No,
I'm drinking the Howard Special.
He can't handle a 40 of Old English, man.
Wow.
The college days got to come out and bet into Boozin one night. I'll tell you that much. But no, like I said, don't take anything away. And the other thing, to your point about Mage taking the lead at the top of the stretch or something like that at Churchill Downs, like this horse still has a lot of tactical speed, as it showed in its previous 2 races. Obviously, it broke slow this last race, so he was dead last going into the first turn. But this horse has tactical speed, has the type of race structure to win a race like the Derby, as we all know. Besides last year, of course, the anomaly. But horses like to be more forward and win the Derby because you can't weave through 19 horses every time. So I love that you guys pointed out that horse like Mage could win at the top of the stretch or lead at the top of the stretch, especially with so much upside.
All right, let's go to the Arkansas Derby, guys.
Howard, can I say one more thing before we go?
Go ahead.
Quickly. Going into this race, a lot of people on paper thought it was the ultimate prep for Forte, going to have everything his own way, and it sets him up perfectly. And, maybe they could even leave something in the tank. nothing was left in the tank in that race. Now it's 5
Yep.
weeks, and it's Todd Pletcher. But I think it's interesting that Pletcher is keeping him in Florida for a while, not shipping right away. He's talking about the weather, which I guess is a factor. I got a feeling that, and look, it is 5 weeks, and Pletcher's the best, but make it clear there's not 1 ounce of petrol left in the tank. He had a run to win that race, in my opinion, and it'll be interesting to see how he comes back off.
I agree. I think the extra week compared to the horses that are running next week is really going to do both those top 2, especially a lot of good. They're going to need that extra week. Let's go to the Arkansas Derby, guys. Again, go ahead and mute, please, guys. We're going to show the full Arkansas Derby. We're not going to talk about this race as much because, frankly, I don't think we need to. There wasn't as much going on, and at least for me, there's only 1 horse in this race that really is going to be a factor in the Derby, at least in my opinion. We'll see if everyone else agrees with that. This is going to be the 2023 Arkansas Derby, won by Angel of Empire for Brad Cox. Very impressively.
And the last to load is Red Route 1. Post 10. They're in the gate. And they're off. A perfect start to the 87th Arkansas Derby. Toward the inside, Two Eagles River, as expected, heading toward the lead. Harlow Cap is with him on the inside in second. Airtime got out well in third. Reincarnate is fourth. Bourbon Bash on the inside fifth. And Rocket Can sits outside in sixth. He's only about 4 lengths off the lead as they head to the backstretch. And then comes Angel of Empire. He's off the rail by 1 path. Interlock Empire, the bright gray, is inside of him. King Russell is next to last. And that late running Red Route 1, blinkers on and all, is still trailing the field here. He's a good 12 or 13 lengths off the lead as they move up the backstretch. Two Eagles River and Nick Juarez set the pace in the Arkansas Derby, and Reincarnate is his companion right to the outside. Harlow Cap on the inside is racing in third and is just a neck to the good of Airtime. Followed to the outside by Rocket Can. He's going to be 4 wide into that turn, but he is in the clear and is only 3 lengths off the lead now. Bourbon Bash hugs the inside into that far turn. Angel of Empire is within range if he's good enough on the outside, and he is starting to move now. Angel of Empire is racing with Rocket Can toward the outside, and then comes King Russell and Interlock Empire. Dropping back and out of it is Bourbon Bash. Red Route 1 enters the stretch 10th and last as they straighten away in the upper stretch. And Angel of Empire has ranged into the lead here. Two Eagles River drops back on the inside. Toward the outside, King Russell is running on. Reincarnate in the second flight with Airtime and Rocket Can. Angel of Empire and Flavian Pratt. Angel of Empire wins the Arkansas Derby and wins it clear.
There is the Arkansas Derby, guys. Here's the chart. Really not too much to say in terms of trips. Angel of Empire just blew by the field on the final turn. Was very impressive. To me, guys, I know this sounds like red boarding. This 9-2 was completely ridiculous. I thought he was going to be out 3-1. I was more than happy to get 9-2 on Angel of Empire. I was against Rocket Can. I proved to be correct. I'm plenty wrong on certain days, but I just didn't think Rocket Can classed up in this race. You see King of Russell at 59-1, almost 59-1, fish in second. Reincarnate, who was 3-1, who really got a perfect trip. I guess we can debate how fast the fractions were if you thought it was a race that could collapse. The horses that at the half mile pole, Reincarnate was really the only one that stuck around. I guess you can give him some credit for that, although he did lose by 4.5 lengths or so. Let's talk about this race. Paul, you're shaking your head, so I'll let you go first.
Don't get, Howard, please do not get fooled into thinking Reincarnate ran anything but a horrific race there. Please, Howard, don't get tricked into that.
I agree. I
He was
Paul, is there anyone you want out of this?
He was laying right off a horse that went off 9-1 and finished seventh rather. He had every opportunity. I played the horse, so trust me, I'm okay saying this. Is there anyone I want out of this race? Yeah, Angel of Empire. I thought he ran huge. I'm kicking myself. He's a Pennsylvania bred. I write about Pennsylvania breds all the time. If I used him as an A, I hit the pick 5 like you do. I didn't believe after the last race. It was a big mistake. I thought he is not only is he the one I want out of this race, he is without question the only one I would consider out of this race.
I agree. The 94, Paul, was on par with Forte. Now I think it's fair to say the Angel of Empire got a dream trip. I mean, I don't know about dream, but I mean, he had no one around him. He just made that nice wide move, similar to Mage, but to me, not quite as like flashy. It was a little more grindy. I think Angel of Empire is a little more grindy, Pete, at least in my opinion. But he finished very well. We show the elapsed the incremental pace. How about 12.12, Pete? That was very impressive. Is this the kind of horse, Pete, that you think can get in and out of spots? That's my only thing. He seems a bit grindy to me. He's sort of like an Orb or an Owl of Another. Worked real well for both those horses, but
yeah,
I'm not sure he's
got
got like that
you got to
athleticism
name
and
losers when
acceleration.
you're.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
You got to name
not very
losers
good,
when you're trying to make a
examples there.
point like that. Yeah.
Well, he's better than who was the horse from last year? Dang it, the close Mo Donegal. He's not like Mo Donegal.
No,
but
God, no, not at all.
He's more talented, but I haven't seen that like. I don't know. They're like in and out of acceleration kind of horse. He's good. He's very good. He is on my short list of horses that could win the Derby, Pete.
Yeah, no, I was super excited because I love this horse just in general. I loved him in the Risen Star. I loved him in the Arkansas Derby, and I was just happy to see him move forward and become a horse that looks like he has a chance to win the Kentucky Derby. Just because I really enjoy the horse, I enjoy his running style. I love the way he ran. Like you said, it wasn't the most difficult to trip, but you don't want the most difficult to trip every time. So he still had to come off the pace. He still had to run by horses, and he ran by them with ease and powered away.
Pete, I think Nick Feldman says that Kings Barnes, Angel of Empire, and Two Phils all ran faster. Nick, we love you. We glad you joined the show. You got to be careful though, because that's misleading to me. Okay.
Yep.
Kings Barnes walked on the lead. Of course he's going to go faster late because he got a ridiculously slow pace and won on the lead. Two Phils, you obviously need to give credit to him. That was Polly. And Forte, as you said, was 3 wide and had a little bit of trouble. So Pete, when people look at what Nick Feldman said, it's point taken. It's a great thing all about horse racing, but I think you do have to take everything with a grain of salt.
Oh, of course. I mean, and I'm sure that's not exactly what Nick is saying anyway. I mean, Nick's astute enough to know, but I think it's a fact. And yeah, and he did mention he had a fast pace in front of him too. But I still think every race is a little bit different. Everybody's circumstance is a little bit different. So trying to figure out from a fraction to fraction time can be a little difficult without any context. And I think if you have the context, it can make it a little bit different. But I think Forte looks like potentially he's going on a little bit of a decline while some of these other ones are on the upswing. Well, I mean, if you care about buyers, he's going the wrong way. He hasn't topped his 2-year-old buyer just yet. So if you think that way, and if that's something that you care about, then I could see the argument if you want some horses sort of, whereas like last year, there was like Epicenter was, he eventually hit a top of the line for his form, but his form was always pretty good. Whereas this year we just have we have a lot of weird horses who they come in and out of looking like contenders. And I think Angel of Empire, I mean, we looked at him and go, oh, okay, he looked really good in the Risen Star, but 89 buyer, that's not getting it done. So you needed that step forward. Yeah. He's also hasn't raced enough to where you don't think there's another step forward in the tank, especially because I think he's going to love the distance. So,
guys, we'll go an extra 5 or 10 because why the hell not? We got a lot of people watching. We have things to discuss. Kyle, I want you to address what Gary Calaroso. Gary, thanks for joining the show. I'm not sure we've seen your name. Appreciate it. He said, if the Kentucky Derby is considered wide open, which I guess that's up for debate based on what some people's opinions might be, could it be more of a jockey's race, more emphasis on which horse the better jockeys select to ride? Let's take this in a bigger picture, Kyle. In your experience betting and watching the Derby, how much credence you take in the jockeys on particular horses?
Well, as viewers of the show know, I don't necessarily play as Howard and I we call it jockey gymnastics. So I don't necessarily play that way. I think it's, well, I think the first part of that question is always what's more to take, because the Kentucky Derby is always a jockey's race. It's always with 20 horses, no matter what, it's always going to be a jockey's race. And obviously, all the jockeys that get into the Kentucky Derby on these horses are more than well equipped. Obviously, some are more well equipped than others, but they're all more than well equipped to get these horses into these positions. So it's always going to be a jockey's race to put your horse in the best position to win the race. Obviously, well, I was going to throw a Leperoux joke in there, but I will digress. But it just comes down to the fact is where are these jockeys going to put these horses? And like I said, obviously, I'm putting a Sonny Leone joke in there. Obviously, Irad's going to put is a great better than Sonny Leone at putting these horses in better positions. But it just comes down to the fact, you can't do that to me, Paul. You can't do that while I'm talking. I know it's a crazy concept, but it just comes down to the fact, like I said, where are these horses going to be put? So I think it's more of where the jockeys race in that regard rather than where the jockeys put themselves.
A lot of people are asking.
Pratt is in the interesting situation.
Correct.
Here.
Yeah.
Pratt rode Kings Barnes to the win in the Tampa Derby, right? Thank you. He rode Angel of Empire the other day. Was very impressed, according to Brad Cox. And he's on Go Rocket Ride, I assume, he's for Mandela, right, on Saturday? Because I think he rode him last time. Unless he's in the Bluegrass, I think we're going to see Pratt on Go Rocket Ride again. So, but I think Pratt ends up on Angel of Empire.
I agree.
The reason I'm slightly against the Angel of Empire, and Pete, we've talked about this, and you're absolutely right. You can only beat who you can beat. That was because Reincarnate is just not that good, at least in my opinion. And King Russell was 59-1, finished second. It's not. Do you downgrade Angel of Empire? That doesn't seem really fair, though, because he ran a big race. But the problem is, no one really came after him. I think the margin of error, you could honestly say, was a little bit deceptive, just because of the field. But you can't take away how fast he ran. Is that correct in your mind?
No, I think that's fair. I do think, though, we talk a lot about who these horses beat. And then if you look at all these prep races, almost none of them have good horses that you beat in the end. And they all seem to be coming back suspect, aside from the winners in a lot of these cases. So you look at it and go, okay, who did any of them beat? So at some point, you just have to figure the horse on its own merit and not necessarily who was behind them. I do think, yeah, we talk about Go Rocket Ride. Like you look at the Santa Anita on paper that coming up, and we'll talk about it this week. That looks like a pretty solid field, whereas some of these came up a little light. But I mean, what are you going to do? You ran against who you ran against. So you have to take them on their merit, take them on who you think can get the distance, take them on their running style, whatever your factors are that drive your handicapping. That's all you can really look at, just because I don't think there was really all that many strong prep races top to bottom. Some ran better because they had to, but I mean, you look at all of them now and you say, okay, which one is actually good past the first few horses?
Well, we'll see what happens, Paul. To me, the Florida Derby is by far the strongest race as of now. The Arkansas Derby was uncharacteristically weak only because of what was behind Angel of Empire. I take nothing away from Angel of Empire. I believe, Paul, in my opinion, the second strongest Derby prep is going to be in California this weekend. As much as we want Tapit Trace, the field is, again, just it's verifying a bunch of horses. Some horse I've never even heard of, which for me to say that is crazy.
Good.
Unless Tapit Trace runs off the screen, I got a feeling the second best prep is going to be in California. But Paul, let's talk about Saez real quick. He could have ridden Secret Oath the day that he ran Tapit Trace. Let's just say, I hate to say it, Paul, but we got to say it. Let's just say Tapit Trace stubs his hoof a little bit and runs second or third in the Bluegrass unimpressively. Any chance he'd ride Mage instead, Paul?
No, none.
Okay. You
Zero.
guys all agree with that? It's been a debate in the chat.
I
agree. And the tiebreaker is it's Pletcher over Gustavo Delgado. No disrespect to Gustavo Delgado. There's a 0% chance of that happening.
Kyle, Noah Megger, Noah, thanks for joining the show. A U of K fan and student. Practical move. I have not made a final judgment on him personally, guys. He's gotten 2 perfect trips. He's run very well. Practical Jokes barely get 2 turns, let alone a mile and a quarter. I want to see what happens. I want to see some adversity. If he wins with a little bit of adversity Saturday and a fast time, he's going to move way up in my book. Kyle, how do you feel about Practical Move right now?
I mean, always these West Coast horses. I mean, when it's always, right now, laying under the radar is basically in the realm of recency bias, right? We haven't seen him run in a while. All these preps are going over and over again. Yeah, I mean,
come on, Siggy. Tapit Trice is the horse to beat in the Bluegrass. Come on now.
Hey, I'm a verifying enjoyer as well, Siggy. I'll give it to you, but yeah, it's definitely Tapit Trice's. I'll definitely Tapit Trice's race to lose for sure. But again, it's just the recency bias for me. Practical Move is laying under the radar. If he runs a really nice race in California this weekend, he's definitely going to move way back up into people's top 5, especially impressively, like you said. But again, that's the thing where, Practical Move has beaten some good horses, but he's really going to have to prove it in a race like the Santa Anita Derby to be able to, move way up in people's, maybe top 4, top 3 horses to win the Derby.
Guys, here's how I want to end the show very quickly. This is the current. Of course, there's 3 huge preps this weekend, so there's horses that can definitely move up. I'm going to slowly scroll down. Pete, I'm going to have you go first. Which of these horses can win, again, right now in your mind, Pete? Not finish second, not finish third. Absolute win candidates right now based on the leaderboard. I'm going to slowly scroll down. Paul and Kyle, you have your say, and then we'll end the show. Pete, you're first. I'll go ahead and scroll slowly. Who can win the Kentucky Derby that's on this list?
I mean, almost everybody on that page so far, I think.
Rocket Can?
Rocket Can, no, you went too you went too fast.
How about Confidence Game?
Confidence Game is the horse that I don't, to me, you're not going to see him again. And you just, he ran that last one in the slop, and who the hell knows? And I don't know about that horse. You Tapit Trice, obviously, Mage, obviously. I think that's probably where you're going to stop. Oh, no, wait, keep going. Did you pass? Yeah, I don't think Disarm. No, I guess not. Did you Hit Show? I don't know about, I doubt Hit Show. Go Rocket Ride is the one I was looking for. If he runs lights out because he's so inexperienced, he could at least be. Skinner's a horse I like. I haven't looked at it. Obviously, we haven't seen the Santa Anita Derby yet, but I like Skinner. Verifying's not winning the Derby. And that's probably it. Yeah. But I think I'm looking at my own top 10 that I put together, and I think there's legitimately.
So you think Mage can win the Derby, Pete? Mage would be like on your pick 4 ticket, for example, right? As of now.
Well, it depends because there's a lot, but I think but I'm just saying, if you're talking about a pick 4 and I think the 10 horses can win, I don't know if I would put them. Plus post matters so much in the Derby as opposed to any other race where we'll have to see how that shakes out. But yeah, I think it's almost maybe 8 to 10 where I wouldn't be shocked if they won.
Okay, we got a lot of people. We love the comments in the chat. Please comment in the chat because we're on the show here in a few minutes. But please comment in the chat. We won't get to everyone's.
By the way, somebody mentioned King Russell hitting the board. I like King Russell, the bottom of that super. That horse is improving. If he takes one more step forward, he clunks up at about 800 to 1 and hits the super.
Let's see. A long shot who is improving, but way slow on the numbers.
I heard he's working really well, too.
Paul, anyone in mind? Paul, who can win the Derby on this list right now? Rattle them off real quick.
As of today, Forte, Angel of Empire, Practical Move, Tapit Trice, Mage, Go Rocket Ride, done.
Not Kings Barnes, not Dermisota Gake.
I liked Kings Barnes in that race. It was just too easy. Everything was too easy. And look at the courses coming out of Dubai, Howard, are 0 for 18. I assure you I've played all 18 of them. Okay. And he's going to beat me. I think he's going to take some money too. So
I would be shocked.
I guess could he? Yeah. But I'm not, I'm selling, not buying on that one.
Paul, I would be absolutely shocked. Ariana Singh, thanks for joining the show. I'd be shocked if that Japanese horse was on the lead in the Derby. Shocked. But I guess we've seen Stranger Things. I don't know. I know
he's not. I'll tell you one thing. If he's going to win at Gate to Wire, then they could build a statue of him in the parking lot at Gulfstream too. So I don't think that's going to happen.
Kyle, real quick, who do you have on your list? I'll scroll slowly.
Three more horses that Paul didn't mention. I think Two Phils, if he improves coming back to dirt, I think he definitely has a shot with the trip that he's going to run. I think the Japanese horse could be interesting, but I agree with you. He doesn't have to lead. And Matthew Chimura, with my very astute viewer, I think if Hit Show runs a big race in the Wood, I think he could have a say in the first Saturday in May.
Okay. For me, guys, as of this moment, again, we got big preps this Saturday. Forte, Angel of Empire, Two Fills is not on my list. I need to see it on dirt, guys. I respect the horse. I love Ravelli. I've got Tapatrice. So I'd say Forte, Angel of Empire, Tapatrice, Mage. I'm not sure yet. Maybe depending on how good Go Rocket Ride is this weekend, maybe I've got to see it. Guys, that's about it right now. In terms of horse, I think that absolutely can win the Derby. It's a very short list for me. And I might be wrong. Things can happen. That's how I feel. I also think, guys, we'll end with this. I think there's a bunch of horses that don't belong in this Derby. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's Derby fever, Paul. I'll let you have the last word about this topic. Reincarnate should not be in the Derby. He'd be great for the Pat Day Mile, in my opinion. Cyclo Mischief ran a nice race. He's not a mile and a quarter horse, in my opinion. Great for the Pat Day Mile. Won't be going there. He'll be going to the Derby. That's why I'm still high on Tapatrice. I know he can get the distance. And Paul, every year it seems like a third of the field can't get the mile and a quarter.
Yeah, and contrast that with Rocket Can. Frank Fletcher, I saw an extended interview with him, the great Jenny Reese did prior to the Arkansas Derby, and he said, if he runs really well, we're going. He goes, I'm not going just for – basically he said, I'm not going just for the good seats. And, Frank owns his own plane, so he doesn't need the good seats at Churchill Downs. He's not impressed with the good seats. So yeah, you're right, though. But – we talked about this weeks ago with Brooklyn Strong. If you're the owner, and especially if you've never been there, and they tell you, you know what, we got a spot for you on the first Saturday in May, it's hard to say no. So I really can't get too upset with anyone who takes a shot. Dale Romans wants to win the Derby more than he wants to breathe oxygen. He grew up around the corner from Churchill Downs. I wouldn't say more than he wants to eat, but he's lost about 150 pounds. God love him. He looks
great.
Awesome. But you know what I mean? So I just can't begrudge those people. I agree with you 100%. They don't belong. I just can't get too upset with the folks for putting them in.
Yeah,
I mean, that's every
Pratt
year, though, Howard. Sorry, that's every year, though. We always say that. There's at least a good handful. So I don't think this year's any different.
And
I don't think I mentioned Practical Move. I apologize. Practical Move can win the Derby based on what happened Saturday. All right, last thing, guys. NCAA tournament men's final starts in 20 minutes. Who's going to win? It's 7.5. Who's going to win and who's going to cover? Real quick, 5 seconds. Kyle.
UConn by 8.
Pete.
UConn by 6, so I took the money line and a parlay with a bunch of other stuff.
Paul.
I have UConn with San Diego State to cover. I think they win by like 3 or 4.
I think UConn wins by 12, and I also like the under tonight as well. Guys, really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. Kyle, Roscoe, Pete Visco, Paul Halloran, great job. We've got big shows coming on this week. Wednesday, Bettin and Boozin. We got 2 shows Thursday. We also, it's not on the page, guys. We are going to do a taped show for Santa Anita. We don't want to forget you West Coast people out there. We didn't forget about you, but we don't have enough time to do a live show. We will do a taped Santa Anita show as well. So look out for that video also. Enjoy the NCAA tournament tonight. And thanks for watching our recap of the Arkansas Derby and Florida Derby. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.